being able to read the room and have a level of emotional intelligence where you balance that empathy with discipline is going to lead you to finding more success as a leader. And the research backs it. This is the B is 4 podcast, and I'm your host, Bria Villa. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the B is 4 podcast. I'm your host, Bria Villa. If this is your first time meeting me, hi, I'm Bria. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm also a corporate girly. I have been a consultant for over 5 years now, helping Fortune 100, Fortune 10, Fortune 1 businesses navigate leadership and business strategies, and really helping leaders and organizations solve some of their hardest problems. So I have had years of experience thinking through strategy. I've learned so many things in my experience, and also in my experience as a woman, as a person navigating life. So I started this podcast to really share some of the information that I feel like I've been fortunate enough to gain over the last few years, whether that's through therapy, whether that's through my career, or whether that's just lived experience. And so this is really an outlet for me to bring back and tap into my creativity, be my authentic self, and honestly put myself out there. I have always found power in my voice and felt like I was quieted for some time, whether that was me quieting myself, whether I felt like it was society quieting me. And so now I'm in a space where I just love to be able to share. So if you're new here, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the party. If you are a returning listener, I love you. Love you down. Thank you so much for being here and continuing to show up. Something I'm really passionate about is walking in authenticity and empowerment. And so that's literally what this podcast is for. So today's episode is about emotional intelligence. I'm sure that you've heard of IQ before. That essentially means intelligence quotient. It's a series of standardized tests that people are able to take in order to assess human intelligence. And I think a lot of people automatically deem people with high IQ as great leaders or people of power and influence. And something that's come out over the last couple decades is the importance of emotional intelligence, which is often referred to as EQ. So we're going to get into emotional intelligence today because it is quite literally, for me in my experience, the biggest indicator of good leadership, of actual influence, and how well you're able to navigate challenging situations. So today, the B is for balance, balancing emotional regulation, balancing empathy, balancing care with strategy, with discipline, and with boundaries. We have all met someone who is literally smart as hell, but an absolute mess in group chats, in work settings, in their love life. And that is the difference between IQ and EQ. So today we're going to talk about what emotional intelligence actually is, who coined it, the science behind it, the research behind it, and why leaders with EQ substantially outperform leaders with a high IQ. We're also going to talk about how you can grow your own EQ. EQ is not about being nice. It's about being effective in love, in relationships, in business, and in leadership, and ultimately in life. Okay, so what is emotional intelligence? It is the ability to understand, manage, recognize, and influence the emotion of not only yourself, but also of others. It's the difference between reacting and responding, exploding and expressing, shutting down and self-regulating. Okay, so let's talk about who coined the term and the research behind it. So the term emotional intelligence was first coined in 1990 by psychologists Peter Salovey and John D. Meyer. But it was popularized in 1995 by Daniel Goleman. He wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, and the book ties emotional intelligence to leadership and success more broadly. Here's what some of his research found. What he found is that EQ can be more important than IQ when finding success in leadership roles. They tested emotional intelligence amongst 33 other workplace skills and found out that EQ was the strongest predictor of high performance. 90% of top performers had high EQ. And the Harvard Business Review has repeatedly cited that strong leaders, especially during times of change or uncertainty, exhibit high EQ. What Goldman's Harvard Business Review research found is that leaders that exhibit emotional self-awareness, empathy, and relationship management significantly outperform their peers. It is literally the indicator between average leaders and exceptional leaders. There was a study done by the Center for Creative Leadership, and they found that a lack of emotional competence is a leading cause for executive derailment. It's wild. So much so that organizations like Google, Microsoft, Apple, all emphasize and prioritize emotional intelligence in their leadership development strategies because they know that that's what helps leaders get to the next level and be outstanding leaders. It is quite literally why I have a job. Like, emotional intelligence is something that I have taught leaders over the last 5-6 years of my career. And I can honestly say that the best leaders that I have ever known and ever worked with exhibit very high EQ. In my years of experience working with different organizations and different sets of leaders, it is always evident to me that the teams that perform really well are teams that are led by emotionally intelligent leaders. Leaders that balance empathy with standards, balance expectations with care. And so oftentimes when I'm going in to consult an organization, I'm looking at the way people are experiencing the organization. And a lot of that is a reflection of their direct leader. People don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses more often than not. And it's because some people will have, again, this brilliance behind the tactical work, but don't have brilliance in the interpersonal work. And that is equally as important. I tell people all the time, happier people are more productive. More productive people drive better business results. Like, there is a very clear through line. And if someone is showing up every day and they feel like their leader doesn't care about them, their leader doesn't see what they have going on, and they aren't cared for in that interpersonal way, then they're just not going to perform well in their role. And then ultimately the business is going to suffer for it. And so leadership development is super important, but EQ is truly an indicator of whether or not a business, a team, a person is going to be successful. Interestingly enough, McKinsey came out with a report in 2022, and then they just recently came out with another report in 2024. And what the research shows is that women leaders tend to exhibit higher EQ than male leaders. I'll make sure that I link the study so that you can go check that out. I've seen teams led by women in organizations outperform their counterparts. And it's usually because there is a very high EQ leader leading that team. And it just happens to be a woman. And so you're actually able to take a test to see how high your EQ is. But a lot of it is more qualitative, just being the fact that EQ is one of those things that is exhibited in real life examples, how you read a room, how you navigate the tone of that room. Not all of that can be ingrained in a test per se, but it is something that you can take a test for if you wanted to. I took the test a few years ago, and your girl has a high EQ, period. But having a high EQ substantially helps the way that you lead. I was in a meeting once, and we were making a decision around what direction we're going to go in for a certain initiative in this organization. And the leader in the room is talking about the direction they want to go in and why they want to go in that direction. And there isn't enough room really for the rest of the team members to jump in, ask questions, interject, etc. And I'm listening to this meeting unfold and I'm reading the room. And because the leader is so passionate about what they want to do and the direction that they want to go in and rolling the messaging out, they're not really paying attention to how the message is being received. They're just more focused on getting the message across. And so as I'm sitting in the room and I'm reading the room, I'm seeing that a few team members are tense. You could just tell by the energy, like, is this the right decision? But also I'm sensing fear. I'm sensing fear of people not wanting to speak up and say, what is this? Why are we doing this? I don't like this. And I'm just like feeling that energy. I'm reading the room. And so in that moment, the leader's expressing everything and they're like, any questions? And it's just dead silent. And so I took a second to pause and I'm like, okay, is this an opportunity for me to make sure that other people are seen and heard? And so when the leader says any questions and it's quiet, I took a second and I was like, hey, are there any dissenting views? Does anyone not agree with this? I have a few questions myself, but I also want to make sure that the rest of the room gets the opportunity to pose questions if they have any. And then what I did was some of the people that I noticed who I could tell wanted to speak up, but didn't really know how to interject just based off their body language, based off what I know about them. I actually called on them. I was like, so-and-so, what do you think? And then even before I said that, I said to the leader, I think this is an awesome idea. I love the direction that we're going in. Let's just make sure that everybody's on the same page, on board, and that way we're all in alignment in pushing this forward. And the leader took a pause and they were like, okay, yeah, for sure. And then I was like, so-and-so, what do you think? Do you have any opposing opinions? Do you have any dissenting views? Are there things that you don't see right with this situation or things that you want to poke holes in? Because now's the time to poke holes in it before we roll it out. Let's just make sure that any obstacle that we may face once it's pushed out, we get out in the room right now. And then the whole dynamic shifted. So this one person speaks up and they're like, I don't know about this. And then this other person speaks up and they're like, I don't know about this either, but what if we did it this way? And then all of a sudden we're having a really collaborative conversation and everyone is trying to figure out, okay, I like this approach, but I don't think it'll work in this org. I like the overall strategy, but I don't think the messaging will land with this group of people in the company. And so it started to really pivot and change once I read the room and was like, some people are thinking about this in different ways that maybe the leader in charge is not thinking about. And what ended up coming out of that meeting was everybody got really on board. We built offshoot strategies. So there was this overall umbrella strategy, and we built offshoot strategies for certain organizations because we know that they operate a little bit differently. And each person really felt like they had the opportunity to share their opinion and be heard in that conversation. And that leader afterwards, I pulled them aside and I was like, hey, how did you think that meeting went? And they were like, I thought it went great. Like, it was so good, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm not sure if you could tell in the beginning, but people were a little bit skeptical and fearful to say something because of how passionate you were. I think that everybody respects you and wants you to be happy as their leader. I'm not sure if that's something that you picked up on, but that's why I kind of interjected, and I hope that I didn't overstep, but that's something that I noticed. And they were like, oh, wait, really good point, actually. And they affirmed that my interjection in that moment helped steer the conversation in a better direction. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. That's just an example of emotional intelligence. That was an opportunity for me to read the room, see what people were experiencing, and then shift things in a way that are going to be more productive for the overall team dynamic and the success of this thing being rolled out. And so that leader took a pause and they were like, oh, I see how you did that. I didn't recognize it in that moment. There's so many things that I'm trying to focus on and I have all these priorities and I was just trying to get the messaging across. But that was a really good example for me to be able to slow down and read the room a little bit more. And I was like, yeah, for sure. That's what I'm here for. That's literally my job. But just want to make sure that you see that too. So oftentimes, like, it just requires taking a pause for a second and looking around and seeing how things are received. I think I'm someone who's just like almost overly aware of people's emotions and energy in a room. It's just something that I've always had like this knack for. Emotional intelligence is a huge difference maker when it comes to getting things done and getting things done productively. And so if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a corporate girly like me, even like a leader in a household, like if you're a parent, being able to read the room and have a level of emotional intelligence where you balance that empathy with discipline is going to lead you to finding more success as a leader. And the research backs it. Okay, so let's talk about the key components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. So how you can increase your emotional intelligence: practice self-awareness. Again, the things that I always talk about: journal, meditate, pause, ask yourself, how am I feeling today? Use an emotion wheel. If you've never seen an emotion wheel, therapists use it all the time, but you can literally Google it, type in emotion wheel, and there's this wheel that has a plethora of different emotions, and it can help you pinpoint exactly what you're feeling. Use that and say, this is what I'm feeling today. Why am I feeling this way? And just regulate that with yourself. Do some breath work, do some meditation. And sometimes it requires you to walk away and respond later. Like, take a pause when you need to take a pause. If you feel yourself getting worked up, if you feel that there's something that you want to have ownership in and it's really important to you and someone challenges it and you start to get frustrated, pause for a second before you respond. And also learn to sit with discomfort sometimes. Emotional regulation is not easy, but it's super important to help build that emotional intelligence. I've had moments where I'm leading a team and there's something that is so clear to me that I need to get across to the team, and I'm getting it across to them, or I'm sharing this with them, and I'm seeing people confused. And I'm like, this is not confusing. Like, why are we confused? In my head, I get frustrated because I'm like, this is a direction that we need to go in. What is not clicking? In those moments, I have to take a pause and say, okay, my understanding is with all the context that I have, all the conversations I've been in that they have not been in, I need to pause and give them space to not only digest the information, but to ask questions and then help guide them through the journey instead of just telling them the direction that we're going on. Give them the journey so that they can be brought along on it too. Also, increase empathy. Listen to others, understand where they're coming from, give them the space to share their feelings and thoughts without feeling the need to fix it all the time. Like, just let them feel how they feel about certain situations and hold that space for them. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes without judgment. Like, just have empathy for the situation they're in. There may be things that people do that you don't agree with, but you can empathize with their decision making. So empathy is a huge aspect of emotional intelligence. And improve your social skills. Practice active listening. I used to have a fidget ring that I would wear all the time, and I learned this from Brené Brown. Obviously, I'm a big Brené Brown fan, so y'all have heard me talk about her multiple times. But Brené Brown also has a fidget ring. And I was listening to one of her speeches one day, and she said that she would spin the ring 5 times before she would respond to someone. It is like a mechanism that she created to practice active listening more. And so I've caught myself doing that. I don't wear the ring anymore, but I'll just like spin some of the rings on my fingers, or I'll like touch each nail on my hand before I respond. Like each nail on my fingers. What? But I'll basically like do a little mechanism to get me to pause and slow down, actively listen to what someone's saying before I respond to what they're saying. Huge aspect of emotional intelligence is building that social skill and working that social skill muscle. It's also learning how to say hard things with soft language. Clarity is kind. And something that I've learned in my career is that you do have to give people feedback in order for them to improve, but you don't have to be an asshole about it. Like, you can give them tough feedback in a very kind way that isn't sugarcoating, but you're delivering the message in a way that's soft. And then the last piece is tapping into intrinsic motivation. Understand what motivates someone. Understand what makes them tick. What's their driver? Why do they get up in the morning? Like, what is important to them? You would want someone to know that about you too. Like, maybe you're a caretaker and you're working really hard because you're trying to take care of your parents. Maybe you're a parent and you're trying to provide for your family. Maybe you have a dream of doing X, Y, Z. And if people know that about you, they're able to see, oh, that's why they're doing this, or that's why they're operating in this way, or that's why this is so important to them. Understand people's motivations and then play off of them. Learn that and then pour into them and allow that motivation to drive the work that also needs to get done in business. And that's just an example, but each of these 5 things are ways that you can build emotional intelligence. So like I said, practice self-awareness, build self-regulation, increase your empathy, improve your social skills, and tap into intrinsic motivation. EQ is often built in moments of tension. Don't avoid those moments of tension. Use them. Use them to practice those 5 things, and you'll really start to build that EQ muscle. EQ is not about being soft. It's about being emotionally skilled. An emotional skill is what builds successful and unshakable leadership. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be present with your emotions in order to be powerful. So a reflection for you or a journal prompt that you can use is, where in my life am I being emotionally reactive versus emotionally intelligent? And then ask yourself, out of these 5 core areas, what can I improve upon to build my emotional intelligence? EQ is the biggest indicator of being a successful leader. In whatever capacity of leadership resonates with you, you can build this skill. And it's important in just day-to-day life and how you show up. People with high EQ build better friendships. They have better relationships. They have better love lives. They have better family dynamics. So it's not just in business, it's literally in everything. High EQ is truly an indicator of a powerful, influential person. And I can honestly say that each person in my life, the people I surround myself with, all are people who have very high EQ. And you may not even realize that you have high EQ because you didn't know what EQ was, but now you know. So make sure that you take a little time to reflect today. I hope that this episode was powerful for you. I hope you learned more about EQ. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, but please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, follow the podcast, leave a review, and send it to someone who you think needs to hear this message today. I'm sending you all my love, and I look forward to chatting with y'all next week. Bye.